You are now listening to Mike's Opinion, Logic Unleashed.
I'm sitting here looking at you, talking to you for those that are listening in an audio-only capacity, or who may be watching on YouTube that can see me. Angry, hurt, upset. Last Thursday, a week ago today, the Supreme Court ended affirmative action. I'm Mike, and this is the Mike's Opinion podcast, and that is going to be the subject today. Usually, I try to keep it light. But this ruling, along with many others recently of the current Supreme Court, made me reflect, made me think about where we headed. It's clear to me, as a thinking, reasonable, rational human being on planet Earth in the year 2023, that people of color, I'm a black man, so primarily I'm talking about black people, the formerly enslaved people of this country. Now, I'm not discounting Native Americans, Latin Americans, or Hispanic people, Asian Americans, I'll get back to them in a minute, or any other people who have suffered. But black people, recently known as in modern times to be renamed African Americans, we were enslaved in this country outright, plain and simple. It is beyond any reason that a thinking person cannot come to the conclusion that in terms of equality, we're not there yet. Can we no longer outwardly and publicly be raped, lynched, murdered, tortured? Perhaps. In fact, I dare say yes. Yet, they still happen in forms. Rest in peace, Mr. James Byrd, right here in this state of Texas in which I currently reside, who was tied, black man, James Byrd, look it up, was tied to a bumper of a truck by his neck and dragged until his head popped off. In recent times. I wore my glasses. You know, there's no real intro music. My wife's intro like I normally do. Because this is serious. And I think it was worth talking about, you know. And I invite anybody, any other podcasters out there who want to do maybe a round table on this, because I am not afraid of opposing opinions. Like Senator Tim Scott, who happens to be black, who went on Fox News. I believe he's running for president, but he recently went on Fox News and claimed that he did not benefit from affirmative action, and that everyone, and I'm paraphrasing here, everyone is judged by the content of their character. according to Senator Tim Scott. I would, and I'm a nonviolent person, just let me be clear. But some people, when they say asinine statements, you want to smack them. You want to smack the shit out of them. And that's what I had that happen. Like some black cameraman would have came out and smacked Tim Scott on his face. I can't say I wouldn't have enjoyed that. Because some people would be like, Negro, please, what are you talking about? Having race considered. It's not an automatic end, but it's a point. It's considered when it comes to college admissions, I think is not only right, but the country owes African American black people that. According to the United Nations website, and I quote, if you look up the slave trade on UN.org, and I'm not advocating for any particular website, and however you think they may lean, left, right, conservative, liberal, whatever. For over 400 years, more than 15 million men, women, and children were the victims of the tragic transatlantic slave trade, one of the darkest chapters in human history. $400 years. 400 years. Not 1 year, not 10 years, not 50 years, not 80 years, not 100 years, not 120 years, not 175 years, not 230 years, not 300 years, 400 years. And I'm driving that home because I don't think people think about that. Century upon century upon century upon century, and we are still suffering from redlining, unjustifiable police shootings, systemic racism on literally every level. Equality has not been achieved. Have we made progress? I'll be the first to admit it. Yes. How do you get a people to teach love, empathy, excuse me, and respect to their children? Because let's be very, very clear. The hate, the hatred, the selfishness, the racism, the bigotry is being instilled in children to this day. The media reinforces these negative images of African Americans. And if I'm keeping it 100, if I'm being 100% honest, niggas be doing nigga shit. But hold on. Hold up. There's a reason for that. And you say, yo, Mike, you're making excuses. No, I'm not. Excuse me. No, I'm not. If a people, and I just want to be very clear here, and I'm reading here. I got a bunch of notes and stuff, and just bear with me. This is from Cornell University. Slaves themselves often suffered severe punishment for the crime of literacy. From savage beatings to the amputation of fingers and toes. The crime of literacy. It was a crime to educate oneself while you were a slave. So, when you see these images of black people doing this or black people doing that, and it's all negatively portrayed in the media, in every news outlet, and maybe even in your personal experiences, it's not an excuse for me to say that there's a reason for that. We have been held back, left back, tortured, and just for trying to educate ourselves, we were whipped, beat, killed, amputated. Listen. This is real. These are facts. Do your own research. You cannot roll a boulder up a steep hill and then just stop and not expect it to either weigh on you or push you back down. Trying to abolish and stomp out slavery is rolling that boulder up. And December 6th, 1865, the 13th Amendment was added to the United States Constitution, prohibiting slavery and involuntary solitude, except as a punishment for a crime. So it's 1865. This is 2023. You do the math. Remember what happened in 1965? Civil rights. There's no way, if you think logically, that in 170 years, almost, you can just make everything equal after 400 years. It gets embedded in a DNA after 400 years. So, I'm not an advocate for crime. I'm not an advocate for violence. But I understand why some black people do what they do. I understand because we are not equal in any way. We have not gained equality in this country on an education level, health, commerce, jobs. I mean, healthcare, real estate. It goes on and on and on and on and on. So I dare say you're a fool if you think we're even Steven, because we are not. We're not even close. And keep in mind, it all still persists. Do you understand? So, when I hear the following from the Supreme Court in an effort to justify removing affirmative action, it's hard not to become livid. It's hard not to feel all the feels. And I quote Justice Roberts on the Supreme Court in part of his summary. Many universities have for too long done just the opposite. And in doing so, they have concluded wrongly that the touchstone of an individual's identity is not challenges bested, skills built, or lessons learned, but the color of their skin. Our constitutional history does not tolerate that choice. End quote. Remember I talked about enjoying seeing somebody smack Tim Scott? I'm nonviolent. I think the same is applicable here to Justice Roberts. To me, it boils down to either these seemingly educated people that are in these powerful, authoritative positions are either racist bigots or idiots. I have an episode you may want to check out, and you might want to know how I feel about the Supreme Court. It's called the U.S. Supreme Court, Real Justice or a Complete Farce. I don't know, it's about 30 or 40 episodes back. This is episode, I think, 172, 71, 72. Check that out. Check out that episode. I'll try to remember to put the link in the show notes. Justice Roberts. How could you possibly come to that conclusion? He said the universities have wrongly concluded that skills or lessons learned are okay to be considered for admission, but not the color of one's skin. The color of one's skin, working from today backwards, is a detriment in this country. And the further you go back, the more of a detriment it was. So after century after century after century of being tortured for just trying to become literate, for just trying to read a book, you don't think black people deserve a leg up, a little extra? This country owes black people. There's a big push for reparations lately. I've read a lot about it. And what the right thing to do, just throwing a bunch of money at people, it'll be helpful, but I don't want to destabilize the dollar. It does get complex. It does get convoluted. It does get polluted. It does get hard to come to a determination what the right reparations looks like. But it's not just money. It shouldn't be just money. How about forgiving taxes? How about traffic incursions that, of course, are not dangerous? How about let's talk about this. How about admitting black people to college for free? Now, this current lawsuit that ended and resulted in the ending of affirmative action was brought by primarily Asian Americans. They combined some lawsuits to Harvard, University of North Carolina, student activist groups. And a lot of them will say, well, what about us? What do we get? If black people got to go to college for free, they'd become more educated than us. I don't think that's true. More importantly, the country owes black people. There's not a racist bone in my body. I have done many episodes concerning race. I have a 7-part series called Healing. Deals with hate, racism. Check that out. It bewilders me. People claiming reverse racism. It befuddles me. It confuses me. I don't understand how somebody can't think this through logically and come to the exact same conclusion. Ending affirmative action is wrong. Period. End of story. The Supreme Court made it so. Now they've undone it. Same thing with abortion, but I'm not going there today. If you can't see the clear segregation that still exists in this country, if you can't see the countless examples of current day bigotry and racism, then you are blind or you choose to ignore it, which makes you complicit at the least. Voting rights slowly being stripped away. Many, many instances of black couples getting lowballed on appraisals for their home. They remove any hint of a black family living there, ask their white friend to get the house appraised, and it suddenly jumps up considerably. Sometimes tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars. I could go on and on and on, giving example after example after example. But you know already. You know in your heart what's going on, what's gone on historically. And if you don't, I would just ask, what meds are you on? What world do you live in? Perhaps the world that the employees in one particular store in New York, I believe it was New York, that didn't recognize Oprah Winfrey and wouldn't let her in the store. I don't know if she was a billionaire at the time, but at least 100 millionaire, very popular, dare I say, world famous black person. We don't know who you are. We're not letting you in. We're not buzzing you in. Did they not know who she was? Did they choose to humiliate her? Governor Ron DeSantis, also a presidential candidate, who doesn't look at this point, and we're still some time out, it's what, July 2023? It doesn't look like he's going to be a formidable opponent to Trump, but anything could change then. And how the indicted Trump is still the GOP frontrunner, beyond me. Are our elections going to end in the chaos of January 6th? Another insurrection? Are the dangers that these poll workers face, these election, these people that are involved in the entire election process have been threatened, harmed? The song What's Going On by Marvin Gaye comes to mind. Road rage, constant mass shootings. This is bigger than affirmative action. I have a episode based on, or called Humans, What's Wrong With Us? I don't think that's the exact title. And you say, yo, Mike, you digress. I always digress. You know why? Because it's all connected. And I think like a tree growing, like in real time. I think in actionable thoughts. And really not, I don't mean actionable thoughts, but growing thoughts. They branch off. And sometimes it's hard for me. I was going to say it's hard for me to stay focused, but really I enjoy the way I think. It thinks different. I have a college degree. My daughter has a master's degree. My mother has 2 master's degrees. I can only assume, because I've never asked them, but just like me, I'm pretty sure I had to indicate what race I was on my college application. So, I cannot say for sure that perhaps I benefited from affirmative action, but I wouldn't be surprised if I did. Because colleges felt compelled to have a certain percentage of black people at their institution. I have a quote from Governor Ron DeSantis, which is why I mentioned him. Florida was one of the first states in the nation to ban race and gender preferences in college admissions. We are proud to have a system based on merit instead of woke politics. And excuse me, that was not a direct quote from Governor DeSantis of Florida. That was a quote from a spokesperson of Governor DeSantis recently. Woke. Merit. Merit. So we're just supposed to be equal now, black people, and we're supposed to just get in on our merit. Forget the molecular DNA embedded ramifications and results of slavery that still reside in us at a DNA level. And you say, well, there's no proof of that. Really? Really? What's the first thing that a doctor asks you during a physical or an examination? Does your mother, father, or grandparents have any of these things? Usually it's diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, things like that. It's also been proven alcoholism, drug addiction can be passed on through the blood. So are you telling me that the suffering, the lack of access to literacy, the stress after 4 centuries of slavery is suddenly out of our system? It's just gone. We're all equal now. There's no racism. You must be fill in the blank. Fill in the blank. Because I could use a bunch of them. I could fill that in with a bunch of them. But I'll just say, you're incorrect. It is hard not to look, for me, at all politicians as the lesser of the evils. Because they're all corrupt. What is it? Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. I believe that's how that goes. Even if they started out with pure heart and good intentions. Knowing this, it seems like none of the politicians are really for black people, but the Democrats are a little less about black people. Seems like the GOP and the Republicans are staunchly against black people. I don't know this to be exact, but it sure seems like it. There are many instances of evidence to support this. So what do we do? What do we do? So now, if I understand this ruling correctly, color of skin can no longer be justified because it don't matter. Don't matter that you're black. Your experiences matter. Your lessons learned in your life matter. So now, black people, to try to get a well-deserved edge when applying to collegiate institutions, have to write their sob story. Woe is me. This is what happened in America. I am a result. I'm living in today, but this is how I have been affected. Educated idiots are making these decisions. Or they're just straight out bigots. I believe it was Liz Cheney, who happens to be a Republican, I don't think she's jumped ship yet, said, we're electing idiots. I've considered, let me rephrase that. I've refused and been reluctant to enter the political arena. It's not because I have skeletons in my closet. It's not because of my experiences with law enforcement or the criminal justice system. It's not because I'm black. It's because I'm too ambitious. I would want to make a huge impact. I applaud those that go out there and protest. I applaud those who face the scrutiny in order to get elected. It's a bit of a clown show now. The political climate and its characters. Excuse me. But the more of these types of rulings that come out, the more I see what appears to be the trickling demise of our society and a sincere effort of those to regress us back to times that were much more harmful to black people. I wonder where I would be best served. I believe I may be a little too long in the tooth to aspire to become a Supreme Court justice. And shout out to Ketanji Brown, I believe that's her name, the latest young black lady who was elected to the Supreme Court. She can't do it by herself. She's outnumbered because the Supreme Court is definitely, and it's politicized. If you say it's not, it is. The Republicans, I think Trump nominated 3. There's 3 Trump appointees on the Supreme Court who wouldn't have got to that point unless they demonstrated certain beliefs, certain ideals. I wish I had the answer. I choose to remain glass half full, optimistically hopeful for humanity as a whole. Foolish? Perhaps. All I can do is hope and pray not. That understanding will someday truly come into play. That love and empathy will become the norm. Because sometimes I think we're this close, infinitesimally close, to the purge, to chaos, to societal breakdown. Because in this latest insurrection on January 6th, had the bombs gone off, had those with a particular agenda been successful, it's possible our entire government structure at the top would have been disrupted at the least or dismantled at the worst. And who knows where we would be right now today. Because it's definitely a domino effect. I wish I had a better pod for you today. A lighter pod today. Perhaps I will next week. I haven't done my update episode. I missed the month of June. I try to do one every month. Support the show. Get some merch. The link is definitely in the show note. Get your t-shirt or something. Mike's Opinion Podcast. Affirmative action is dead. But we are not. We are not. We have overcome so much pain, strife, struggle, challenges, and we must continue, because a popular protester recently said, and I'm paraphrasing, but she said, America is lucky that black people only want equality and not revenge. That's all I want, is to be loved and accepted and equal. And you don't even have to love me. But supposedly we're only 15 to 18% of this 330 plus million people. 45 million people, black people. Before I close, I just want to reiterate Asian people, Latino people, anybody who's not black, you want to get into college too. I get it. Your people have suffered too. I am going to go out on a limb and say, on American soil, for 400 straight years, your people did not suffer like mine did. We deserve any advantage afforded us. We have not been made whole, and frankly, I don't even know if it's possible. But once again, I'm an optimist. But what it would take is time, for one. Regardless how much money, how many advantages, once the money and advantages were truly in place, it's going to take centuries, probably, to undo centuries of harm. Think about this. If you get cut with a butter knife, and right next to that cut, you get cut with a straight razor, which one's going to be worse, and which one's going to take the longest to heal, and which one's going to leave the worst scar? A cut with a razor. And that's what slavery was to black people. And it hasn't even healed yet. We barely just stopped the bleeding. I want to take a minute just to say thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I hope you're doing okay. I am Mike. This is the Mike's Opinion Podcast.
Thank you so much for listening to Mike's Opinion. Logic Unleashed.